My family invited me to dinner for a big surprise, then told me I wasn't their real daughter. I got the text on a Wednesday afternoon. Dinner at Delino. 7:00 p.m. We have big news. It was from my mom, sent to the family group chat that I'm usually the last to hear from. No context. No extra messages. Just that. But what caught me wasn't the place or the time. It was the tone. That word big felt intentional. Like they wanted me to be curious. Like they wanted me there and I went. Because no matter how distant things have felt lately, they're still my family, right? I remember pulling into the parking lot that night. The sun was just starting to dip, casting these long shadows across the pavement. I took a breath before stepping out of the car, adjusting the collar of my nurse's uniform. Hadn't had time to change. My shift had ended late, and I'd rushed over without even grabbing dinner. But part of me was excited. Maybe things were finally changing. Maybe this time I'd be part of something. As I walked into the restaurant, I could already hear the laughter. I turned the corner into the private dining room and froze. There they all were. My mom, Marlene, sipping wine and smiling like she was posing for a magazine cover. My dad, Gerald, arms crossed, nodding politely as he listened to Tessa. And Tessa, my younger sister, was glowing, her hair freshly styled, makeup flawless, surrounded by everyone's attention as always. Even my grandfather, Walter, was there, sitting at the end of the table. Quiet as usual, but present. They were all there, except me. No one had saved me a seat. But that wasn't the first thing I noticed. My eyes landed on the oversized white banner stretched across the back wall. Congratulations to our real daughter. Big, bold letters, glittery, loud. It hit me like a slap. I stood there trying to make sense of it. No one looked shocked to see me. No one apologized. My mom raised her glass casually and said, "Oh, good. You made it. We've already started." Tessa looked me up and down and smirked. Didn't have time to change. I nodded stiffly and forced a smile. Got off work late. There was a weird kind of silence after that. Not awkward. Comfortable for them. Like I was the guest. Not the daughter. Like this wasn't for me at all. A waiter came by and slid a spare chair to the edge of the table for me. No one moved to make room. I sat there quietly trying to shrink myself small enough to disappear. That's when my mother lifted her glass again. To Tessa, she said with a proud, dramatic smile, "Our real daughter. We finally have something to celebrate." Everyone clinked their glasses except me. I stared down at the tablecloth, unsure if I'd misheard. Real daughter? Tessa laughed. Okay, I'll explain, she said like she was telling a joke. She leaned in with a gleam in her eye. I did one of those DNA kits. It turns out I'm not adopted. I'm actually your biological child. Mom and Dad thought they had me through surrogacy. But I'm theirs. Fully. Completely theirs. People cheered like it was a gender reveal party. Gerald wiped away an emotional tear. My mom placed her hand over her heart. I blinked, trying to keep my voice steady. Wait, what does that mean about me? The table quieted for a second. Then Marlene gave the smallest shrug. Well, honey, you were part of the same process. It was complicated. We were young. Mistakes happen. Laughter rose again. Louder this time. I sat there suddenly cold in a room full of warmth I wasn't invited into. And just when I thought I couldn't feel smaller, the waiter came back. He walked over to me, not anyone else, and handed me a small sealed envelope. The owner asked me to give this to you, he said. Everyone at the table turned to look. I looked down at the envelope. My name was handwritten across the front. Just my name. And in that moment, everything shifted. I wasn't born into this family. At least not in the way most people are. But growing up, no one ever said anything different. My parents, Marlene and Gerald, had always been distant, but they called me their daughter. They gave me their last name. I called them Mom and Dad. They fed me, clothed me, sent me to school. From the outside, we looked like any other middle-class American family. But inside our house, it always felt like something was missing. Something I could never name out loud. Tessa, my younger sister, was everything they ever wanted. From the moment she could walk, she was the center of every conversation, every holiday, every picture frame on the wall. She was their golden girl. Blonde curls, pageant smile, straight A's with half the effort. And me, I was the one who remembered to take out the trash. The one who sat in the back seat during vacation so Tessa could have the window. The one who always made her own birthday cake because mom ran out of time. I don't remember the last time either of them told me they were proud of me. Not when I got into nursing school. Not when I stayed up 36 hours during the COVID crisis. Not even when I paid off my student loans by working double shifts every weekend. But I didn't complain. I thought maybe that was just how families worked. Maybe love didn't always look like hugs or applause. Maybe being the responsible one meant you didn't get a spotlight. And despite all the little cracks, I stayed close. I called on birthdays. I offered rides to the airport. I showed up to Christmas with gifts even when no one thought to get me one. I never missed a dinner invite because deep down I kept hoping this time would be different. That's why when the group text came in about the dinner at Delino's, I told myself maybe they're finally going to see me. Maybe the big news was about something we could all share. Maybe, just maybe, I'd finally be part of the celebration. Not just a spectator. I was tired that day physically and emotionally. 12 hours on the hospital floor. 2 codes called. 1 patient I couldn't save. But I didn't cancel. I didn't want to be the one who bailed. I'd gotten used to being the one who showed up even when it hurt. I remember putting on a bit of lipstick in my car mirror trying to pull myself together. I told myself, don't overthink it. Go in. Smile. Maybe this time we'll be different. But nothing could have prepared me for that moment. That banner. That sentence. Congrats to our re-daughter. It wasn't just a party. It was a statement. A line drawn in glitter between who belonged and who didn't. And the way they looked at me when I asked, what does that mean about me? Like I was the one making things uncomfortable. Like I was overreacting to something they thought was a harmless joke. It told me everything I needed to know. Still, I didn't leave. Not right away. I stayed in that chair with my hands in my lap and my heart beating out of rhythm. I waited for someone, anyone, to notice the pain on my face to ask if I was okay. No one did. And then the envelope came. The waiter placed it down gently, respectfully, like it was something sacred. The outside was simple, just my name in black ink. Alina. I hadn't seen my name written like that in years. Not in handwriting. Not like it mattered. And that's when I knew this wasn't part of their plan. This wasn't something they arranged. This was something different. Someone had known I'd need this moment. That I'd need the truth. And somehow they'd made sure it found me. My hands were shaking as I picked it up. I didn't know it yet. But what was inside that envelope was going to flip everything I thought I knew upside down. Not just about that dinner. About my entire life. I didn't open the envelope right away. I held it in my hands like it was something fragile. Something that could either save me or destroy me. The paper was thick, almost old-fashioned, and the handwriting was sharp and deliberate. Someone had taken their time. Someone had wanted this to reach me. And I didn't know if that terrified me or gave me hope. But I couldn't open it. Not there. Not while I was still surrounded by people who were pretending I didn't exist. I slipped it into my coat pocket and looked up. The conversation had moved on without me. Tessa was now talking about her DNA test like it was the climax of a rom-com. I honestly just did it for fun, she said, swirling her wine. But when I got the results, I was shocked. Apparently, I'm 100% biological. No donor, no mix-up, just me, the real deal. Everyone laughed again. Even Grandpa Walter gave a polite nod. Though I noticed he wasn't laughing with his eyes. I finally found my voice and asked quietly, so, what does that mean about me? For a second, no one said anything. My dad looked toward the wall like he was trying to remember a dentist appointment. My mom shifted in her seat and gave this small rehearsed smile. Well, she said, we used 2 embryos. Back then, the clinic didn't tell you much. We didn't ask too many questions. Tessa interrupted. Basically, it was a mix-up. I'm theirs. Alina, you might be someone else's. She said it with a laugh. Like she was saying I'd ordered the wrong Starbucks drink. Everyone chuckled along except me. I wanted to leave. I wanted to scream. But I sat there completely still. Like my body had detached from the room. My mom reached across the table to pour herself more water. It doesn't really change anything though. She added casually. You're still family. Still family. The way someone says that when they're talking about an old neighbor or the dog they gave away years ago. I felt my throat tightening. My heart pounding in my chest. Not fast, but heavy, like it was dragging the rest of me down. No one apologized. No one acknowledged that what they'd just revealed was more than a quirky surprise. It was my entire identity being thrown out like a punchline. I wasn't just the second best daughter. I was the one who didn't even belong. That banner above the table made it clear. Our real daughter. Not both our daughters. Not our family. Just one. One real daughter. And I wasn't her. Tessa was glowing, eating up every second of it. She pulled out her phone and started showing pictures of the DNA results like it was proof of her destiny. My parents leaned in, fascinated, amazed, hanging on to her every word. I sat there invisible, shrinking with every sip of my untouched water. At one point, Tessa leaned toward me and said, "Honestly, this kind of explains a lot. You've always been different." She didn't mean it kindly. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. It was a reminder from work. Overnight shift next week confirmed. Be there at 6 p.m. Even my job treated me with more respect than my own family. I swallowed the rising heat in my throat and stood up. I'm going to step outside for some air, I said. No one stopped me. No one asked if I was okay. My chair scraped softly against the floor. And their conversation continued without skipping a beat. I stepped into the cold night air, pulled the envelope from my coat, and stared at it under the street lamp. I was shaking, not just from the cold, but from the realization that I had never truly been part of that table. Not when I was 5. Not when I was 15. Not tonight. And somewhere inside that envelope, I had a feeling I was about to find out why. I stood outside that restaurant like the ground beneath me wasn't real anymore. The laughter from inside kept spilling through the window. Soft clinks of glasses. Familiar voices. Stories told for the 50th time. If you didn't know better, you'd think it was just another family gathering. Just another ordinary dinner. But something had split wide open inside me. And all I could hear was the sound of paper unfolding in my hands. The envelope was warm now from how long I'd held it. My name, Alina, still staring back at me like it belonged to someone else. For a second, I thought about not reading it. Maybe it would be easier to walk away from it all and just carry on not knowing. But I'd spent most of my life doing exactly that. Quietly swallowing things that didn't make sense. Excusing the cold looks. Pretending their love felt like enough. I was done pretending. So I tore open the seal. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper. The handwriting stopped me cold. Slanted, elegant cursive, familiar in a way I couldn't place at first. Then it hit me. Grandpa Walter. I hadn't seen his handwriting since I was a child. Back when he used to mail me birthday cards with $2 bills tucked inside. He'd stopped years ago. Or maybe someone had made him stop. I opened the letter. Alina, if you're reading this, it means they finally told you. Or maybe they told you just enough to hurt you. Not enough to explain. I've waited years for this moment. There's something I've needed to say for a long time. But I was asked not to. And I kept that promise until now. I could barely breathe. You were never supposed to end up with them. Your mother, your real mother, was my daughter's best friend. Her name was Camilla Cardenas. She was strong, fierce, and kind. She wanted you more than anything. But she died in a car accident when you were just a baby. No one talks about her anymore. They buried her memory to protect themselves. Not you. I felt my knees give. I sat down on the stone bench near the sidewalk. The letter trembled in my hands. Camilla. My mother had a name. A name I'd never heard. A name they'd never once spoken. After the accident, Marlene stepped in. She offered to take you in. She said it was the only way to keep you safe and cared for. At the time, I believed her. She was my daughter. I wanted to trust her. But the truth is, she didn't take you out of love. She took you out of guilt and pride. She didn't want to raise her best friend's child. She wanted to erase her. I tried. Alina, I tried to keep you close. But Marlene didn't want me involved. She said I was confused. She said it was better for you if you just moved on. I remembered how my grandfather used to pull me aside at family gatherings and whisper things like, You're stronger than they know. Or, you see things clearly, just like your mother. I thought he meant Marlene. Now I knew he hadn't. I kept Camilla's things, letters, journals, and photos. I have one of her holding you in the hospital, smiling so wide you'd think she was the luckiest woman alive. She was. You were her miracle. You still are. Come see me tonight. I'm still here. I'll tell you everything. Love, Grandpa Walter. The letter slipped from my fingers, landing softly in my lap like it had delivered its final weight. My chest felt like it was caving in and expanding all at once. Every part of me that had been waiting to be chosen, to be included, to be seen, suddenly felt irrelevant. I didn't want to be seen by them anymore. I didn't need to be. I looked up at the restaurant window. My family, the people I thought were mine, were still talking, still celebrating, still living in the center of their own story where I had never truly belonged. They hadn't lost anything tonight, but I had found something. A thread of truth, a name, a mother, a grandfather who had never given up on me, a family I had never been told about, one that might have actually loved me the way I'd always longed for. I stood up. This time I didn't hesitate. I walked straight to my car. Hands steady now. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't owe them that. They'd had 30 years to tell me the truth. And they chose silence. But someone else had chosen love. And he was waiting for me. The drive to Grandpa Walter's house felt longer than it was. It was only 15 minutes from the restaurant. But every red light stretched into an eternity. My fingers gripped the steering wheel tighter than I needed to. My thoughts raced faster than my heart. I was shaking. Not from fear, but from the overwhelming pull of something I had never felt before. Truth. I didn't know what I'd find when I got there. I just knew I had to go. When I pulled into the driveway, his porch light was already on. He was sitting on the swing exactly like he had when I was little. Back then, I'd climb onto the seat beside him and ask questions about everything. I'd thought of him as the only adult who really listened to me. Now I know why. He stood up slowly when he saw me. No words at first. He just opened his arms. And I walked into them like I was coming home. He held me longer than I expected. Longer than anyone had in years. When he pulled back, his eyes were glassy, but his voice was steady. I'm so sorry you had to find out like that. I nodded, too choked up to answer. He led me inside, and everything smelled like cedarwood and old memories. The living room hadn't changed in decades. The same crocheted blankets. The same vintage lamp with a leaning shade. But now it felt different. Like it belonged to me somehow. On the coffee table sat a small wooden box. He opened it slowly, as if it were sacred. Inside were letters stacked carefully. All in the same handwriting. Some addressed to me, some never sent. Your mother wrote these during her pregnancy, he said, and a few after you were born. She used to say she could feel your heartbeat before you even kicked. She talked to you every day. She loved you so fiercely. Alina. He handed me a photograph. It was a hospital room. A young woman with deep brown eyes and long dark hair was cradling a newborn. Her face was soft, glowing, joyful. That's Camilla, he said. The room blurred around me. I had never seen her before. But I knew her. I looked at her the way a child looks into a mirror for the first time and finally sees their own face clearly. I saw myself in her nose. Her cheekbones. The way she cradled me. Like I was everything. That picture did something no DNA test or family dinner ever could. It made me feel real. My voice trembled. Why didn't they tell me? Walter sat down beside me. They didn't want to love something that reminded them of what they took. Marlene always lived in Camilla's shadow. When Camilla died, she saw her chance to rewrite the story. And Gerald, he just followed whatever made life easier. But I knew I couldn't let Camilla's daughter vanish. So, I stayed close. As close as they'd let me. And I waited for the day you'd come to me. He pulled out a faded envelope marked for Alina when she's ready. It was my mother's handwriting. I opened it slowly, hands shaking, heart wide open. My dearest Alina, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't stay long enough to raise you. And I'm so sorry for that. But I need you to know something no one else can ever take away. You were wanted. You were chosen. You were loved. If they tried to make you feel small, it's because they were afraid of how big your heart could be. Don't let them dim your light. You are mine and I am yours always. Mom. Tears spilled freely, not out of grief, but out of recognition. For the first time in my life, I wasn't questioning if I mattered. I knew I did, and I knew who I was. I wasn't the leftover daughter. I wasn't a burden. I wasn't the girl who had to earn her place at the table. I was Camilla Cardenas' daughter. Loved, fought for, chosen. I looked at Grandpa Walter and smiled through tears. I want to know everything. He smiled back. Then let's begin. I stayed at Grandpa Walter's that night. We talked until nearly 3 o'clock in the morning. He showed me more letters. More photos. Pieces of a life I'd been living on the edge of without ever knowing it. I learned that my mother, Camilla, had been a music teacher. She used to sing to me every night while I was still in her belly. She called me Lena Bug in her journal entries. She'd planned to raise me on her own. She was scared but proud. Brave. Every sentence I read felt like oxygen after years of breathing through a straw. By morning, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going back to that house. Not to Marlene's sideways smiles or Gerald's polite detachment. Not to Tessa's mocking tone. Not to that dining room table where love was served with conditions. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I was done waiting for them to change. Done trying to fit into a space that was never built for me. Instead, I chose myself. A few days later, I filed a petition to legally change my name. Alina Cardenas. The first time I said it aloud at the courthouse, I felt something settle inside me. Like a puzzle piece finally clicking into place. My real name. My mother's name. My truth. I moved into Walter's guest room temporarily. The walls are covered with photos of Camilla and her students. Her violin hangs by the door. I've picked up a few of her songs. Soft lullabies I play on a keyboard I bought for the house. Music feels like a language we've been speaking across time. And in the middle of it all, I kept working. Nursing doesn't stop even when your world shatters and rebuilds itself. But I work differently now. I smile more. I listen closer. I started mentoring new students. I carry a picture of Camilla in my badge holder. Not because I need others to see it, but because I finally want to see her with me. I don't talk to Marlene or Gerald anymore. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Tessa sent a few messages. One said, "I didn't know it would hurt you like that." I never responded. Letting them back in would be like handing them a hammer after I've spent months gluing myself back together. And I'm done being broken for the comfort of others. What I've learned is this. Family isn't something you're born into. It's something you build. It's who shows up when everything else falls apart. It's who tells the truth when it's hard. It's who leaves the light on and waits for you to come home. Even when everyone else has forgotten you exist. I thought I was nobody for so long. But I was somebody's miracle. I was loved by a mother who never got to watch me grow. But gave me everything she had while she could. I was protected by a grandfather who waited decades to hand me back my own story. And I finally learned how to love myself with that same fierce unconditional energy. So here's what I'd tell anyone who's ever felt like the outsider in their own family. You are not the problem. You are not less because they failed to see your worth. You are not defined by the ones who couldn't love you right. You are allowed to walk away. And when you do, when you finally choose truth over performance and love over legacy, you don't lose a family. You find your own. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And if you've ever had to rebuild yourself from the ground up, tell me in the comments what truth set you